If you're in Rekieta's case, your only defense is to go after the government. Okay? If you don't go after the government, you're forfeiting. And here, let me explain what like these people seem to think if you don't talk about the Constitution, don't attack any of the legal issues with the case, and you act real nice, then you'll just get rehab. Has nobody noticed what's happened with the war on drugs for the last 50 years? I mean, I get some people in the right are in denial about this, but it's like, I mean, the libertarian right and the civil liberties left gets it, but a lot of other people clearly don't get it. So most of the people that get arrested related to drugs are only arrested for drug possession, not for dealing, not for distributing, not for having any other criminal problem whatsoever for which there are other crimes they can be charged. Simply for possessing something the government says you're not allowed to have. Which, by the way, people should step back and think about that principle. Do we really like the idea of locking people, giving the government the power to lock you up for life because you have a product that the government doesn't like? Right? Without any evidence of it causing other harm to other people, because that's already separately criminalized. Maybe not the greatest precedent to set. But putting that aside, someone in Rekieta's position, if he were to not raise the constitutional issues, what typically happens to him in Minnesota? First-time defendants charged with what he is charged, who plead guilty and don't challenge the case on any grounds, get an average sentence of 66 months in state prison. So the advice that Good Logic is offering, that some of these other people are offering is, hey, Nick, go serve 66 months in state prison. And they don't seem to process this. And people that are sending me messages, you don't understand, Barney. This is like, no, you don't understand. The only defense is the constitutional defense. And let me show you real world how it works. The 1 out of 3, they've studied this more so than anything else because the libertarian right and the civil liberties left tend to care about this issue more because it impacts more people, right? Like drugs is one of those things that 1 out of 10 people will have a problem with at some point in their lives. Consequently, they tend to pay more attention to it than, say, white-collar tax crimes or other political crimes that only 1-2% of the people are ever going to worry about the government coming after them for. Drugs, a lot more people worry. So what do you get? You get a lot more social research, a lot more statistical research, a lot more studies, surveys, a lot of data. 1 out of 3 prosecutors drop entirely a drug arrest for only one reason: risk of the Fourth Amendment being a successful basis to challenge. Almost every plea deal that ever gets cut, that's a good plea deal, that doesn't lead to 66 months for a first-time offender found only with drug possession. Because that's the norm in Minnesota. First-time offender, drug possession, only drug possession, 66 months in state prison. Why do they give you better deals? Because, again, know your audience. KYA. Why does the prosecutor, why does a cop, why does a judge give you a different outcome? Because they're worried about losing. Because they're worried about the broader consequences of losing. Because they're worried about embarrassment in the court of public opinion. That's what motivates them. Not generosity. Not reconciliation and reformation and recognition of contrition or confession. They want confession to justify the bad treatment of you. They want confession for the same reason they wanted it from the witch, to justify burning them at the stake. That's why. But you create risk for them. Risk not only in that case that they lose, risk in that case that they get embarrassed in the court of public opinion, but also risk for a bunch of other cases. What's wonderful about the constitutional defense, and a reason I recommend it in any case, civil or criminal, that concerns the government, is it puts the government at risk that in order to make an example out of you, they could be the ones that get made an example out of instead. And an example that sets a precedent for all their future cases. And that could impact a whole bunch of their present cases. It's often the case that people are unaware. Like, I'll give you an example. Federal discovery. Slowly but surely, the federal defense bar had stopped advocating for certain kinds of continuances and certain kinds of rights to discovery in federal criminal cases. Snipes' case comes along, And I use it as a case to educate everybody and start hammering and hammering and hammering away. And we get more discovery than other people had ever got before. We get more, we get a continuance that a judge said he would never, ever grant. And because it was a high profile case, a whole bunch of other lawyers were getting it. And they started literally just copying and pasting my pleadings. I found this out because I was searching something once using certain phraseology, and I was like, oh, that looks like mine. And I realized it had gone all across the country. Literally cut and paste of what we pled. And all of a sudden, discovery rights started being renewed. Due process rights started being renewed in the criminal justice system. So if you, let's say Rekieta challenges on Fourth Amendment grounds and succeeds, that's the risk. He succeeds whether the trial court, appellate court, or Supreme Court. The risk for the state is all of a sudden every other criminal defense lawyer in the state goes, oh, that's interesting. And they start, and other criminal defendants start hearing about this in some capacity. And all of a sudden, Fourth Amendment starts becoming robust again. Prosecutors don't want that to happen. Judges don't want that to happen. Police don't want that to happen. So how can they avoid that happening? The bigger, stronger your constitutional defense, the more likely they get you a sweet deal. It's the only way you get a sweet deal. You're guaranteed to not get a sweet deal if you take the, I shouldn't talk about the Constitution, but be practical approach. That practical approach is called the suicidal approach. But, and it reflects more broadly that I'm running these people that think if you get caught with drug possession in America, that, oh yeah, usually you just get rehab or diversion, don't do any time. I've seen this commonly commented on. And it's like, that's totally false. Utterly false. We've been doing the incarceration first, usually incarceration only approach to drugs now for half a century. And pretty much every study out there shows that it fails. It doesn't work for the individual. It doesn't work for broader society. It fails to completely understand the nature of drug addiction. Instead, what it does is it takes in some police departments as much as a third of their resources to focusing on drug possession instead of gangs, instead of assaults, instead of burglaries, instead of murders. It's incredible. It is, so I have argued for a less criminal focus and incarceration approach to drugs since I was 14 years old when I was at Grace Baptist Academy in high school debate. I don't think the school knew that this was the argument we were proposing in debate, but it was clear even then that this was a failed approach. That whatever your objective was, unless it was to support the censorship state, unless it was to support the control grid, which, by the way, the war on drugs has done more to promote than anything other than the so-called war on terrorism. It has been used as a basis for civil forfeiture, all the horrible civil forfeiture laws. Guess where most of them start? Drug war. In the invasion of your right to counsel, guess where most of it starts? Drug war. Taking away requirements of certain things to be done in a bail hearing and your bail rights. What was the way of just eviscerating the Eighth Amendment? Drug war. Eviscerating the Fourth Amendment? Drug war. So we've sacrificed constitutional liberty to give more power to the dystopian control grid for something that doesn't work by any objective metric and takes cops off the streets from investigating real crime.